Welcome to the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce Education Committee Network's PAC 14 TV show, Education is Everybody's Business. My name is Ladd Colston. I am a business member with the Chamber and the CEO of Sustainable Visions, LLC. Today, I will welcome our co-host, Ms. Dominique Sessa, who is a disability advocate, a commissioner for the Maryland Commission on Disabilities, and Miss Wheelchair Maryland 2024. She will provide us with her knowledge, her experience, her expertise, and available resources as we share today's educational topic, which is the disability community, opportunities, barriers, and success stories. Sponsored by the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, Chamber CEO Bill Chambers, and our Education Committee Network members want this TV show to be a source of community awareness and knowledge of topics that impact education and workforce development here on Maryland's Lower Eastern Shore. We appreciate you listening in and providing us with your feedback on its usefulness. So please subscribe if you're viewing this show on YouTube, and a thumbs up if you like it. Let's start with a comprehensive definition of people with disabilities. We will use that definition that's cited through the U.S. Census Bureau. It defines people with disabilities as those who have an ambulatory disability, a cognitive disability, a hearing or vision disability, or a disability that makes self-care or independent living difficult, which includes households that don't earn enough to afford the essentials of housing, childcare, food, transportation, health care, a smartphone plan, and taxes. Unfortunately, there is a lot of community stigma that continues to impact persons with disabilities in education, career preparation, workforce employment, and independent living. Fortunately, my co-host, Ms. Dominique Sessa, is one of the strongest advocates for the disability community here on the Lower Eastern Shore and the state of Maryland. In fact, she recently provided testimony to Congress on Capitol Hill regarding AT, or assistive technology, and is currently Miss Wheelchair Maryland 2024. And we will talk about that a little later. Ms. Sessa is also the creator of an extensive disability resource guide, The Girl in the Pink Wheelchair. She did this as a teenager. Her resource guide is unbelievable, and so we have placed the actual website as a slide, and I encourage everyone to go to this disability resource guide from The Girl in the Pink Wheelchair. It is my honor and privilege to have this wealth of knowledge with us today. Welcome to Education is Everybody's Business, Ms. Sessa.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ladd. It's always a pleasure to advocate. It's like I always tell people, advocacy is one of the kindest things you can do, and I love to see disabled people have representation and a voice.
Yes.
You know, when I had started my website, I was a teenager, and I felt that people did not see the girl, they just saw the wheelchair. I was struggling with my identity and the gaps that existed, and I realized that was my passion, to help people, to help bridge the gaps that are existing. because there's a lot of people with various disabilities, whether it's visible or invisible, and they don't know where to seek resources. And I always say about the Eastern Shore, especially the lower shore, the resources are sparse.
Yes.
And it's difficult sometimes to reach out and ask for help if you don't know where to get help. So I always tell people in the community, I'm here and I love to help you. I love to connect you to resources. You have a disability advocate here, and it's a passion of mine.
And it's so fantastic because we live in a rural urban area, and you just can't compare the Lower Eastern Shore with a New York City or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or even a Washington, D.C. with the mass transportation, with all the access that they have there. What about the situation here on the Lower Eastern Shore? You're a survivor.
Well, I had said last year I testified to the U.S. Access Board, which is a federal agency, and I said on the Eastern Shore the resources are sparse, and our transportation is a struggle. And recently, as you said, I testified on the Hill about AT. A lot of people are unaware what assistive technology is, but it's any software item that helps independence. It can be a wheelchair, it can be a device that helps those with visual disabilities read, or it could be anything that helps to add to that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that there's a cost barrier there, which is what led me into my platform as Ms. Wheelchair Maryland 2024. Because when we talk about price barriers, we don't always consider how this is affecting people in the rural area. I often say Somerset County is the poorest county in Maryland.
True.
And there's a high percentage of people with disabilities. But how do you reach them without broadband? And how do you reach them if they're not aware of our resources?
And that's why I applaud you and all the work that you do, and just the resource that you carry around in your head, much less on your website. And for those of you that don't know, Dominique is also on the Disabilities Commission. Is that correct, for the state of Maryland?
I am a commissioner on the Maryland Commission on Disabilities. It's a state-level appointment. And I'm also the chairwoman of the Maryland Technology Assistive Loan Program. And I know that's a mouthful, but the Technology Assistance Loan Program helps people with disabilities get low-interest loans, because we know there's a lot of times if you're disabled, there's prices you simply can't afford. So you can go through that program to apply for adapted vehicles or assistive technology such as hearing aids, which isn't often covered. And that's an important thing, because when you're talking about rural regions, these are resources that change lives.
And many of our viewing audience, you do not recognize how much money is required if you're a person with disability, just a wheelchair. We're talking about wheelchair. It costs as much as a car almost. We're talking at least a motorcycle. How much are we talking about? Just
my last custom electric wheelchair was $85,000.
$85,000.
That's not including any adjustments or other things. And there's a large gap. Hearing aids, for example, aren't covered, and they're averaging $5,000. And adaptive vehicles, which really matter on the Eastern Shore especially, we're looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $75,000. So that's the gift of independence. That's why I say disability shouldn't come with a price tag.
Yes.
And that affects our ability to thrive in the workplace or in education. Because what do you do if you don't have the tools that enable you to be independent?
Exactly. And so that's why we wanted this show to be a special episode that will focus on the opportunities, the resources that are available to help overcome some of the many barriers that we see that currently exists, not only for persons with disabilities, but also for persons with disabilities here on the Eastern Shore. And as I share with my colleagues that that are looking at persons with disabilities, I let them know that they are tabs. They are temporarily able-bodied. So at some point in life, you may become one with a disability. So listen intently.
And it's so true. So many people acquire their disabilities. And many people are born with it. It progresses. You never know. And I always tell people we all age in the disability. We all need mobility aids. We all need access.
So you have brought aboard 3 featured resource people here on the Lower Eastern Shore, and as co-host of this episode, I'm going to let you introduce each one, and I'm going to let you ask the specific questions.
Well, thank you so much. It's always an honor to represent this beautiful disability community and to do any project with you. I think our community here of disabled people will feel so empowered and their voices will be heard by these panelists.
And I thank you.
We have Dr. Catherine Jones, who's the Executive Director of the Bay Center of Independent Living. What services and support does the Bay Center offer?
Well, first off, Dom, thank you so much for inviting me for today's show. I'm very excited to share some of the services that our center offers. First off, we're celebrating our 50-year anniversary this summer, and I'm very happy to share that there are centers for independent living in all jurisdictions of the United States. Our center provides services on the 9 Eastern Shore counties, so we're actually one of the largest centers in Maryland. We offer several different services. We have 5 different departments. One is a health and wellness studio that is free to the general public for individuals with disabilities to have exercises that are tailored specific for their disability, but it's also there for their caretakers and siblings. That's a relatively new program. We also have a youth transition program where we help high schoolers gain work skills so when they graduate from high school, they're ready to transition, hopefully, into post-secondary education with at least 4 job skills on their resumes. We receive referrals to the Division of Rehabilitation Services for those services. We also have an adult vocational rehabilitation program where we help adults fine-tooth, comb their resumes with them. We work on job prep skills, and of course we help them apply to several businesses in the area so they can be gainfully employed. One of our largest departments is our supports planning agency, where we provide Medicaid case management services, and that's for over 500 people located on the Eastern Shore.
What do you think is something people should know about the Bay Center and the advocacy you do for youth and people with all disabilities?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you asked that because Centers for Independent Living are very unique. We provide services for all disabilities. So they range from individuals who might have substance use disorders to individuals with mental health to orthopedic disorders. So it's the entire array and umbrella of disability services. We also serve a lot of individuals who acquire their disabilities through the aging process. So we have over 800 individuals that we're constantly providing services for every day. But what really makes our centers unique is our independent living programs. Through our independent living department, we provide services free of charge, no referrals are necessary, that we can provide services without having to go through a lot of red tape to make it happen. For example, we have a durable medical equipment loan closet. We receive refurbished, gently used durable medical equipment through Maryland Department of Aging, and they bring it down on trucks from Baltimore, and we have, fortunately, we have this huge warehouse that we can store it in, so individuals can get that equipment free of charge. Through our independent living program, we provide a lot of advocacy services. So we have a lot of individuals who call and they just need someone to help advocate for them. If it is questions on Social Security disability insurance or supplemental security income, we get a lot of questions about what are appropriate accommodations to ask for, what's reasonable in a workplace. So our information and referral and advocacy is like nonstop every day within the agency. But most importantly, we're there to, when someone walks in our doors, we take pride in providing holistic services. So they might come in the door saying, this is what I need help with. For example, we have this amazing grant program where we're able to assist people in purchasing modular ramps, purchasing hearing aids, purchasing assistive technology devices. So someone might come in the door and they're like, I need to get a modular ramp. Can you help me with that? And then we see that they're struggling to get in the door, and before they leave, we've already got them hooked up, if it's with a walker or rollator from the Durable Medical Equipment Loan Closet. We also will provide information if they need case management services, if they qualify for Medicaid long-term care programs. So when they walk in, they walk out and they're like, oh wow, this is great, because it's not just Band-Aid fixes we do. We want to make sure that people can remain living independently in the community and have a good quality of life while doing so.
I think that's one of the best things about the Base Center. It really reaffirms disability is not one size fits all. And your durable medical equipment is great. I've been a recipient of it, and I can't stress it enough how much the Base Center does in that way. What do you think, from being the executive director of the Base Center, that are some barriers that we see on the Eastern Shore versus other areas of Maryland?
So you have some of the standard barriers, and I think you're going to hear it echoed throughout the state of Maryland, and we have a governor that is addressing it, but definitely affordable housing, and from our center, it's accessible housing. That's definitely an issue that we're seeing. We also, transportation and working with Shore Transit, to being that we're in a rural region, it's very difficult for individuals who need to have paratransit services to be located within 2 miles of the bus route. So that makes it very restrictive as to when individuals with disabilities can use the paratransit services and where they're located in the county. So we've received a lot of phone calls for that. Medical transportation as well, for individuals who want to go across the bridge to receive medical services because of the limited specialty providers or physicians here on the Eastern Shore. So that is another barrier that we see. But I'd like to say, we've been receiving more and more phone calls for individuals needing help with the Social Security Administration and understanding the processes for being able to qualify for Social Security disability insurance. Not having the ability to make an appointment because they're so backlogged. SSA is so backlogged. Being able to make an appointment to be able to have someone assist them in completing the applications that are completely online. So for our center, we'll be happy to print them out for individuals and maybe give them a little guidance, but unfortunately they still have to go through SSA for that entire process. We're also seeing the state is recognizing it, but there's a huge backlog with Maryland Department of Health and individuals who qualify for supports planning services to have their plans of service approved. We have individuals who qualify to have personal care assistance at home, to have home delivered meals, personal response services. And what's happening is it could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, some have up to 3 years, where we're still waiting for approval for plans of services so people can actually start receiving them. So I think what we're seeing, particularly with SSA and Maryland Department of Health, is a backlog as a result of the pandemic, and they have not been able to catch up. Now they've come up with plans on being able to catch up, but I think we're witnessing not just that on the Eastern Shore, but for the entire state.
What would be your words of advice for a person with a disability that's younger as well as older that feels that there may be barriers to education or the workplace?
Okay. Excellent question. If they're younger and they're still in high school, we offer an amazing self-advocacy class, and it's actually throughout the school year. And students who have either IEPs, 504 plans, and or have a chronic health condition do qualify for what's called pre-employment transition services. And so not only do we put students in the workforce, they do 8-week experiences. They're considered volunteer experiences, but we pay them a work stipend, which is minimum wage to do it. But we also accompany that with self-advocacy classes. So in those classes, we talk about, do you disclose if you have a disability? And if you do, when do you disclose? What are your rights under American Disabilities Act when it comes to reasonable accommodations? And then, of course, we put it in motion and into place in the workplace. So with these 8-week work experiences, they build the confidence, the self-esteem, but they also utilize the tools that we teach them through self-advocacy as to should they disclose or not, and those things that really help them become confident once they graduate from high school to be able to find gainful employment and being very transparent with their employer and know when to disclose. I think that's probably the one question that we get from students and also parents. You know, should we say anything, you know, upon hire?
I understand completely, because I think it's a big stigma, especially in the workplace. From your years of being an executive director, what do you think has been one of the most rewarding aspects of working with the SIL?
Oh my goodness. I will honestly say there's just so many rewards and benefits to serving others and being able to be in the community that you grew up in and being able to just find some form of equity for everyone in which you live, and being given this amazing gift of being executive director and being able to utilize the funding that we have to be able to remove those barriers, remove those stigmas, and to be a part of this advocacy movement and being able to represent the center and all the great things that all my coworkers do every day. I feel like I could wear a crown every once in a while. I feel that honored because it truly, it's humbling to be the executive director and be able to represent such an amazing center.
Well, thank you so much, Kat. If someone wanted to learn more about the Bay Center to get a referral, how would they do that?
Okay, so it's a simple phone call. They can call 443-260-0822. And we have a greeting. If you don't want to go through the entire phone greeting, I understand. You can just leave a message at the front desk and we will direct your call to the right person. Or you can go to our website, www.bayareasil.org, and there's more contact information on there.
Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today, Dean. What was it like going through the local public education down here as someone with a disability?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think in general I would say my experience was a good one, but unfortunately that isn't always the reality for students with disabilities going through the school system here. So I moved here when I was in the 3rd grade. And the first thing that we did, I moved here from New York, and in New York they had, an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. And so we already sort of knew about that going into elementary school, and so it was a pretty seamless process to get an IEP set up for me when I was in elementary school in the 3rd grade. And basically what an IEP is, for our viewers who might not know, is it's a list of accommodations that you would receive to help your education. It would be things like extended time for testing, things like accessible rooms in which to take classes, making sure your classes were in places that you could get to. Now, in elementary school, it was pretty easy. I didn't really need too many accommodations. And I would say the same in high school. But some of the accommodations that I needed were classes in, rooms I could get to easily. And unfortunately, that was something that presented a challenge at times. It was, due to the location that teachers have all their classes in, they have a classroom that, is theirs, that they've made to, fit their class, their teaching style. And sometimes that doesn't quite coincide with, the accommodations that I may have. And I know many times the school system struggles to provide things like a scribe for certain students who may not be able to write, screen reader technology for those who may have difficulty reading small print, things like that. So I think my experience was a good one, but unfortunately that isn't always the case.
I think that's always important to remember that, all of our experiences as people with disability is unique, just like disability. How was the transition from that high school, for example, to higher education?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing I noticed was in high school and middle school here, we were presented with some options as far as, okay, here are some accommodations you could request, things that might be helpful. I studied at the University of Maryland, and when I started there as a freshman up in College Park, some lists like that did not exist. I went in, made an appointment with my disability services counselor, and they said, okay, tell us what you need. And that was definitely a transition, because in high school you were given options like, okay, someone might request extended time, someone might request an accessible classroom, someone may request additional time to get to classes, and none of that was really present in college. It was more of, okay, you tell us what you need. And, the fact that I had an IEP going through middle and high school made that easier, because I simply requested the same accommodations I've always had. However, for people who may not have had an IEP in middle school and high school, maybe they didn't need it. Suddenly they go to pursue higher education, and they need it because, higher education is a lot more intense. So, I think that was the biggest transition that had to be made. I had to think about what I needed, and, some of those things weren't feasible. So I didn't quite know how much to ask for.
Can you tell me a little bit about your current position that you hold?
Sure. So I currently am a project engineer for the city of Salisbury. Basically what that means is all plans for any sort of development that's going on in the city come through my office. And we review the plans for things like, making sure they're up to engineering code, up to environmental code. And one of the areas that I particularly look for, make sure things are up to ADA code. And fair housing code. The fair housing code is a little bit more important because usually the developments we deal with nowadays are a lot of housing developments, so houses, townhomes, apartments. ADA doesn't really cover that. It covers more of the public spaces. But these are some of the important things we look at. And my background is in mechanical engineering. I graduated in 2020 from the University of Maryland, and I actually interned with the city of Salisbury during my time in college. And so, yeah, a lot of the work I do now focuses on making sure spaces are accessible for people of all abilities. And, whether or not that is required by code is secondary. There's a lot of things developers can do to go above and beyond just the bare minimum requirements. One comparison I like to always use is accessibility is the floor. That's the bare minimum that you need to achieve. And inclusivity is the ceiling. There's no limit for how inclusive a space can be. And there's a lot of things you can do to make that happen. So I like to think my job helps me play a pretty important part in making sure that spaces that are built in Salisbury are inclusive.
Well, thank you for the incredible work you're doing. We need more accessibility in all spaces.
I agree.
For someone that's in high school or wanting to pursue higher education or have a job, what are some of the barriers that you experience that you could give insight and help and advice to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, if you are in high school and you're considering higher education and you have a disability, the first thing I would say is don't let that stop you. You can do anything. Like, if you have a disability, you've already faced more hardships and trials and tribulations and obstacles than, someone without a disability. So, I think that just speaks to the character of people. And so my advice would be don't let that discourage you. There are ways you can pursue higher education. I chose to go to a four-year college because that's what I needed for my degree. But there's so many options out there now. There's online education. There's community colleges. We have a fantastic community college right here. So there's so many ways you can get your degree and actually do the work that you want to do. And there's plenty of things that don't even require a degree. Parkside has a wonderful CTE program that, teaches students trades that are vital, like being an electrician, a plumber, things that society would stop functioning without people like that. And there's ways you can achieve what you want to achieve. I would definitely say there are resources out there. I think, I'm not sure if I can speak to exact resources. There's tons of agencies in the area that support individuals with disabilities. Like the Bay Area Center for Independent Living, just as an example. So I think if you want that help, if you want to pursue higher education, it's definitely possible. I don't think anyone with disabilities should let that stop them. But I do think, the stigma of having a disability is something all of us have to overcome. But that's not just in education, that's in life in general. But, my best advice would be don't let anything stop you. Yeah.
I appreciate that so much. So for someone entering the workplace, for people that have physical disabilities or other disabilities, oftentimes I think the word accommodations can be really scary, but since you went through the self-advocate journey and you hold a position, what would be your advice for bringing up accommodations to your workplace?
That's also a great question. I really think it depends on the individual situation. I, for one, have always been comfortable bringing up the fact that I have a disability, even through the hiring process. It's something that I mention fairly early on, and I stress that that is what makes me a good fit for the position, because I've experienced obstacles and I've come up with solutions to get around those obstacles. It's not something I need to think about, okay, here's a problem, how do I come up with the solution? It's just something that I do day in and day out. So I certainly, I make it known that me having a disability is one of my strengths. and that, as far as accommodations go, I think a workplace wants to help employees, achieve their full potential, because then that's beneficial for the workplace itself. I think it depends also on the culture of the place that you're looking to work. You certainly want to make it known that you having a disability is not going to be a detriment. It's going to be an asset. It lets you think differently and see things in a way that others might not. So I've always put that forth and, sort of made it an asset, shown that it is my strength and not, a weakness, and that by providing me some of these accommodations, they're just supporting me in helping make the place I work a better place to work.
Wow, that's fantastic. So for people on the Eastern Shore, I don't think we often get enough representation, and sometimes it's also a lack of resources. So for someone who's went through all these barriers, is now triumphing, what would you say to someone that is nervous about entering the workplace or education, or is facing a discrimination?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a very valid point. The Eastern Shore does have limited resources, even compared to other places in Maryland. I think that's something a lot of us who advocate in the disability community know. I think, even if the resources aren't available locally, there are resources out there. There are agencies you can go through that will help connect you with those resources. You don't have to do it alone. I think that's my biggest message to anyone watching, whether you have a disability or not. You're not alone in this. There are people out there who can help you. There are people out there who want to help you. I think it's just a matter of connecting people with disabilities with the people who can get them to the resources. I think that's always my goal. Even if I personally can't connect a person with a disability to the resource, I can connect that person with the disability to a person who can help them. I think that's what I would say. There are resources out there. Yes, it's a struggle to get them on the Eastern Shore, but, you really don't need to be nervous, because there are fantastic people, there are fantastic agencies in the area, fantastic organizations that they truly want to help. And I think it's just about leveraging that and, getting connected with them and letting them help you.
Well, thank you for sharing all of these wonderful things, because I think it's just a highlight of our community.
I think so, yeah.
Hi, Candace. Thank you for joining us here. You're the director of the Salisbury University's Disability Resource Center. Can you share what the Disability Resource Center offers to individuals with disabilities?
Absolutely. So the Disability Resource Center is responsible for making the university's decision around reasonable accommodations and services for students with disabilities at Salisbury University. So with that service, as a registered student, in addition to accommodations for academics, classroom, housing, we also determine accommodations for emotional support animals. We provide multiple services and supports for students. So in addition to regular, I would say, accommodations, we're also providing academic skill building services, typically in areas like self-advocacy support, time management, organization. We do a lot of outreach to the campus community and the surrounding community as well.
In your role as the director, what are some of the barriers that you notice in our area, especially because it's rural?
So transportation is always a barrier. And then I would just say physical accessibility. We have a lot of older buildings around our area. So physical access to buildings is probably the most obvious, but I would say behind that would be general accessibility of where can information be found. Is it in an accessible format? That's another major barrier to individuals with disabilities in our surrounding community.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lack of understanding of what access means for people. So for people that are in high school, for example, how would they find out about the Disability Resource Center?
So we are available as a resource to high school 504 IEP coordinators. We do a lot of transition events, as well as if you're interested in Salisbury University and you're coming to our campus, you can schedule an in-person meeting and or virtual meeting with a member of the DRC staff to talk about the services that are available to students with disabilities, as well as we can talk about the process of how you request accommodations in this environment. It's a little bit different than high school, so we want to make sure that parents, families, and students know about that difference, as well as we are participating in all of the university's orientation events. So we have a specific section called Healthy Seagulls. So during that time, we're talking to parents and we're talking all about how their students can get connected. But we also want to have that one-on-one touch point with students as well. So we do a ton of outreach on the campus community during the normal semester. But we also, like I said, like to be available for transitioning events as well.
That's phenomenal. And I know that you also offer to support to other people with disabilities regarding the university as well.
Yes. So across the campus, we provide campus-wide outreach. So anything from, the concept of disability, diversity and disability kind of going hand in hand. We do a lot of accessibility related things around universal design for learning. Everything that we do has a touch of inclusion, equity, and belonging. What do we need to do to be good allies? How do we show up as allies for each other? And then intersectionality. We do a lot of intersectionality work, making sure that folks understand that there are challenges associated with all of the different layers of us. So we're definitely trying to support the campus community in that way as well.
Well, thank you for also really uplifting that people with disabilities are diverse, just like disability. I think that's
Absolutely.
What is something you would love for the community to know about what the Disability Resource Center does?
So I think I would say the most important thing is that not only are we a campus resource, but we're a community resource as well. So I work with local community as far as from Queen Anne County to Berlin, working with transition staff, providing trainings to organization, community providers, etc., on disability as diversity, on understanding, like I said, intersectionality, belonging, how to work with inclusion, how to make your workplaces more inclusive and equitable. So we do a ton of things in the community just to try to build that disability community support. And like I said, for me, it's through allyship and advocacy. I like to use my voice whenever I can to advocate for individuals with disabilities and to do as much as I can to make sure that we are providing the services and supports that students say that they need. That's kind of the unique part of what we do. The services and resources that are available in the DRC outside of, I would say, our legal responsibility are all based on student needs. So we are really into making sure that we are serving the campus community and providing the supports that students need to be successful.
So as we know, sometimes in rural areas that the resources are more sparse, it's hard to get connected. So if someone wanted to find out more about the Disability Resource Center, how would they do that?
Best way to do that would be our website, www.salisbury.edu/DRC. We also have we're on Instagram, so you can find us at Disability Resource Center at Salisbury. That's probably the two best ways to find us, but we're everywhere. So even if you were to Google us, you would see some of the events and resources that we provide and other things that we're participating in as well.
In your role as director, what do you think is one of the most fulfilling aspects of the job?
Working with the students is always going to be my favorite part. I will always want to have some level of engagement with students because I enjoy, seeing students progress through that journey. A lot of times students come in feeling like they don't know if that journey is going to work for them. And so helping them to navigate what that looks like Not that I'm doing anything, I don't feel like doing anything for people. I feel like just making people aware of what the supports and resources are makes all the difference. Probably one of the things I'm most proud, I can't say most proud because I'm most proud of so many things, but our DRC Access Awards, again, was created out of the wants and needs of students. Students wanted a way to recognize fellow students as well as faculty and staff on our campus for the work that they do to go above and beyond. So the DRC Resource Center Access Awards are given annually. We have a whole month dedicated to access. Even though we do this work 365, we have a series of events in April called April is for Access. And during that time is when we present our Access Awards. Access Awards nominations only come from DRC registered students. And then we are presenting as a staff those awards to students, faculty, and staff on our campus. And again, those are individuals that have gone above and beyond. So I love doing that. I think we're in year 4 of our Access Awards at this point. So very proud of that.
What would you say to a high schooler and even an older person with a disability that's nervous about attending university here?
Mm-hmm. I would say whether it be Salisbury University or any university, I would start with your Disability Resource Center. Similar to how you would want to navigate academic programming to determine whether it was a good fit, you definitely want to do that with Disability Resource Centers as well, because not every disability service office is the same. While all of us are required to provide the basics as a compliance effort, a lot of disability services offices provide so much more support. So based on kind of what you feel like you would need, you should align your needs with the school that you pick and around their disability services office.
What do you think when we're looking at disability resource at SU? What would you tell to anyone that says SU is the place to go?
Oh, I would agree. I would agree. You know, I feel that we call ourselves in our office, we call ourselves Team DRC because we are the students' team. And whether you're working with me directly or any member of my staff, I feel comfortable with the services that you are going to receive. I think we take an individualized, unique approach with each of our students and making sure we're doing what our students need, but then also making sure that we're preparing the campus community as well, because that's a part of our work. It's not just the accommodation piece that we do with students. The more that we can provide professional development opportunities, leadership, and training to our campus, the more success our students will have in that environment. So really trying to balance what that looks like. We're here for that. We have our pre-orientation program called DRC STARS, and STARS stands for Student Transition Access Retention and Success. And it's a pre-orientation where students move on campus a few days earlier, and then they work with us to transition before the rest of the campus community gets there. That has been a great program. Students have done really well with that. So I would definitely tell anybody looking for a good disability support service area and looking in this area, I would definitely say Salisbury University is the place to be.
For a person that's been in this director role, what is something you've seen grow with SU compared to other universities in this area?
Mm-hmm. I would say just the capacity for the students that we serve. When I started in this role 7 years ago, we were serving a little under 300 students at SU. We are now serving 10% of the campus community. We're serving over 700 students a year, and we've been that way for several years. So I've seen the office grow from nobody knew what we did and where we were to students thanking us as they graduate, and students walking across the stage with Disability Resource Center, graduation, swag on. And it's a proud moment to see disability being represented and the identity of having a disability, people being proud of that, because that's what we're here for. We're here to support students as they develop their identities. And it's just a proud moment to see it grow and to see that so many students feel like we've played a role in their success.
I love how you're just encouraging disability to thrive. And I also love that it's an accessible workplace as well. So what would you say to a person with a disability that's looking at SU for work?
I would definitely say, again, communicating with our Human Resources Office as well as I have to, while I'm talking about this, I have to do a shameless plug for DOORS. I've spent many years at the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So I feel like if you're looking to get into the workplace, working with DOORS closely to make sure you have the supports, whether it be physical supports or whether it be a person to support you in the workplace. And I feel like we all work together as a person's team. Again, trying to make sure that we're providing all those different supports from all those different layers to people who need it.
It's incredible. So what would be your last and final advice to anyone that's looking for a job at the university or be a student? Because I think advocacy can be very scary regardless of your age.
I think what I would say is, come as you are and be ready to learn. We are working with students who have had lifelong disabilities, as well as students that may have only come into their identity of having a disability a short time ago. So we're ready to meet students where they are and be supportive for how they see their journey. Not every student wants to be a visible, vocal advocate, but we want to teach folks how they can show up as allies and advocates in many different ways. And so it doesn't have to be that you want to stand out with a sign. It might just be that you want to be heard, and your voice can just help so many other people. So, I will always be an advocate. I will always do this work, and I will always be there to welcome in new students and help them to learn and thrive in this environment.
I appreciate that so much because I've had issues myself with the university space, and you're just changing things.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be in your company, and I always enjoy talking to you.
As we close out this informative episode, I would like to thank our co-host, Ms. Dominique Sessa, and wish her much success as she competes for Miss Wheelchair USA 2024 in August in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And to assist her to represent our state of Maryland in this competition, I would like to encourage everyone viewing this show to go to Miss Sessa's GoFundMe link and make a financial donation to offset the many expenses that are required for her to travel and compete. Thank you in advance for your time and financial support. Let's all support Ms. Dominique Sessa. Well, this brings us to a close for Year 2, Episode number 4. Please tune in for our next episode, Episode number 5, where we will feature the educational topic, Financial Support, Student, College, and Career Scholarships offered by the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore. Until then, remember, education is everybody's business.